Sad news this morning. 80s heartthrob and star of Airwolf, Jan-Michael Vincent, has died.
He speaks in a raspy whisper, the result of a terrible car accident in 1996. Jan was driving drunk when he plowed into the back of his girlfriend's car in this intersection. The tabloids had a field day. Jan broke his neck and was left with damaged vocal cords.
He was once the highest-paid actor on TV, making $200,000 per episode. But when Jan-Michael Vincent died, nobody even noticed for a whole month. He lost his leg to infection. His voice was destroyed in a drunk driving crash. His wives fled in terror from his abuse. By the end, the man who once shared the screen with legends like John Wayne was living in obscurity, broke and forgotten. This is the gut-wrenching story Hollywood doesn't want you to remember.
Once one of Hollywood's busiest actors, spends all his time just trying to stay sober.
I don't have to be an alcoholic all my life. I mean, I have to be an alcoholic, but I don't have to be a drunk all my life.
Why were you a drunk?
I like it.
Jan-Michael Vincent was born on July 15, 1944 in Denver, Colorado. His family history was full of crime and violence. His grandfather, Herbert Vincent, was one of the most active criminals in California during the 1920s and 1930s. He led a string of bank robberies and counterfeiting schemes. In January 1932, Herbert was arrested in Hanford, along with Jan's uncle Gordon. They were caught for robbing a bank and assaulting someone with a deadly weapon. Two other uncles, Clifford and Harold, had already been convicted in 1931 for robbing banks in Hardwick and Strathmore. Another uncle named Hoy was shot and killed by a sheriff's deputy in Tulare while he was wanted for robbery in Oregon. This was the world Jan was born into. His father, Lloyd Whiteley Vincent, was born on September 7, 1919, in Tulare. He grew up in Hanford and chose a different path from the rest of his family. In 1941, Lloyd joined the U.S. Army and became a B-25 bomber pilot in World War II. While his relatives were going to prison, Lloyd was flying combat missions. When he was just 12 years old, most of the men in his family were already locked up. In 1940, Lloyd met Doris Jane Pace, who was 15 at the time. They got married in Denver a year later when she turned 16. After the war ended, Lloyd became a painter and started a sign company with Doris in Hanford. Jan watched his father live a life built on discipline and routine. He later said that seeing Lloyd live by orders gave him a deep mistrust of authority. That mindset became a part of his identity and would show up in many of his roles. After graduating from Hanford High School in 1963, Jan went to Ventura College. He stayed for 3 years, but in his 4th year, he decided to quit. Instead of registering, he took the $200 his parents gave him and went to Mexico. He just wanted to surf and enjoy life. That freedom didn't last long. In 1966, he was eligible for the draft and decided to enlist in the California Army National Guard. He served until 1971 and worked as a helicopter mechanic. This job would later help him in his acting career. Years later, he would play Stringfellow Hawk, a helicopter pilot in the series Airwolf. Even though he didn't want the military life, it gave him skills that made his most famous role feel more real. Like his father, Jen found himself in a strict system where every move was controlled. His break into acting came by accident. One afternoon, he was eating outside with his friend Timmy Dagwood, who already had some small roles in Hollywood. A talent scout named Dick Clayton walked by and noticed Jan. Clayton had a reputation for finding young men who could become stars. He had helped actors like Rock Hudson and saw something in Jan. He gave Jan his business card, but Jan didn't care much. He put it aside. It was Dagwood who convinced him to follow up. Clayton believed Jan had the look and presence of James Dean. He added him to his group of young talents, which already included Harrison Ford and Nick Nolte. Jan didn't have much training, but he didn't need it. He had a natural calm on screen. Jan-Michael Vincent started his screen career in 1967. He played Tony Prito in The Hardy Boys, The Mystery of the Chinese Junk, and was credited as Mike Vincent. The pilot was based on book number 39 from the Hardy Boys series and followed the brothers as they bought a Chinese junk boat named the Hai Hao. Inside the boat was hidden treasure and 4 mysterious men who wanted it. The show had future stars like Tim Matheson, Richard Gates, and Terry Garr, but it never got picked up. Vincent had just finished a stint in the National Guard when talent scouts noticed him. That role could have launched his career earlier, but the pilot never aired beyond its original run. In 1968, he appeared in an episode of Dragnet called The Grenade. He played Rick Schneiderman, a high school student who survives a horrifying acid attack. The role was intense and showed he could handle serious material. That same year, he joined the Banana Splits Adventure Hour, a children's show from Hanna-Barbera. He played Link Simmons in the Danger Island segments. The show ran from 1968 to 1970 and became known for using a laugh track and mixing music, animation, and live action. Vincent's performance showed he could work in both drama and kids' entertainment. Also in 1968, he acted in his first American film, Journey to Shiloh. He played Little Bit Luckett, one of 7 young Texans who called themselves the Concho County Comanches. They traveled to Tennessee to fight for the Confederacy during the Civil War. The film was directed by William Hale and based on a 1960 novel by Will Henry. It had a strong cast including James Caan, Michael Sarrazin, and Harrison Ford in one of his earliest roles. Vincent's character didn't die in battle, but from disease before they reached Shiloh. The film ran for 101 minutes and focused on how young men chasing glory often met tragic ends. He had already worked internationally by then. In 1967, he starred in a Mexican-American film called Los Bandidos, or The Bandits. He played Tay Boy Brown, one of 3 Americans caught in the French intervention in Mexico. The movie was co-written and co-directed by Robert Conrad during a break from his TV show, The Wild Wild West. It was filmed in Mexico with a cast that included Manuel Lopez Ochoa and Pedro Armendáriz Jr., though shot in 1967. The movie didn't reach U.S. audiences until May 1979. By then, Vincent was already a known actor. His breakthrough came in 1970 with Tribes, which aired on November 10th. That was the Marine Corps' 195th birthday. He played Private Adrian, a peaceful hippie who gets drafted and sent to boot camp. His anti-war views clash with Gunnery Sergeant Drake, played by Darren McGavin. The film was shot like a documentary and gave a raw look at life in the military. It came before Full Metal Jacket and An Officer and a Gentleman by more than 10 years. The movie was later released in Europe under the title The Soldier Who Declared Peace. In 1972, he starred in The Mechanic with Charles Bronson. Vincent played Steve McKenna, a young hitman trained by Bronson's character Arthur Bishop. The original script had a romantic storyline between the two, but it was cut to get financing. George C. Scott turned down the role because of it. Richard Dreyfuss was first cast as Steve, but was replaced in December 1971. The movie opened with a 16-minute scene that had no dialogue. The ending was a twist. Vincent's character poisons Bronson, only to be killed by a car bomb that Bronson set before his death. In 1974, he starred in Buster and Billy, a tragic love story set in Georgia in 1948. He played Buster Lane, a high school star who falls in love with Billy Joe Trueluck, a quiet girl from a poor family played by Joan Goodfellow. His friends had taken advantage of her before, and when she rejects them later, they rape and murder her. Buster takes revenge by killing 2 of them. The film also starred Pamela Sue Martin as Buster's fiancée Margie. It was directed by Daniel Petrie and was one of the first American films to show male frontal nudity. It was shot in Metter and Register, Georgia. Locals were excited about the production, but didn't expect its dark content. Then, in 1975, he played Carol Joe Hummer in White Line Fever. The movie came right after the trucking strikes of 1973 and 1974. Vincent's character was a Vietnam vet who bought a truck and tried to start an honest business. He named his truck the Blue Mule, but the industry was controlled by a corrupt group called the Glass House. They wanted him to move illegal cargo, and when he refused, they fought back. He was beaten, framed for murder, and even had a rattlesnake put in his truck. In the final scene, he drives the Blue Mule through a giant 2-story glass sign. The stunt was real and became one of the most famous crash scenes of the decade. The movie was directed by Jonathan Kaplan and showed Vincent as a full action star. In the late 19th, Jan-Michael Vincent became one of the most talked about actors in Hollywood. In 1978, he starred in Hooper with Burt Reynolds. The movie was about stuntmen, and Vincent played a young rising star named Ski Shidsky. He drove through fire, crashed through glass, and showed off his fearless energy. Reynolds played an older stunt coordinator trying to keep up. The 2 characters pushed each other with bigger and riskier stunts. One scene featured a 224-foot free fall. Another ended with a rocket car flying over a 325-foot gorge. That jump looked so dangerous, even the studio worried the characters wouldn't survive. Vincent's role gave the movie its spark. His speed and strength were the perfect match for Reynolds' experience and weariness. That same year, Vincent played Matt Johnson in Big Wednesday. It was a surfing drama set between 1962 and 1974. The film followed 3 close friends, played by Vincent Gary Busey and William Catt. They grew up on the beach, but their lives changed as the Vietnam War began. Vincent's character was the best surfer in town, but also the most troubled. The film was shot at Surfrider Beach in Malibu and showed long, quiet scenes of waves, bonfires, and late-night conversations. The story ends with a giant swell called Big Wednesday. 2 years later, in 1976, Vincent starred in Vigilante Force with Chris Christopherson and Victoria Principal. The story took place in a small California town where oil workers caused chaos. Vincent played Ben Arnold, a local man who asked his brother Aaron to help bring order. Aaron was a Vietnam veteran played by Christopherson. The movie was shot in Simi Valley in just 30 days, with temperatures hitting 108 degrees. Director George Armitage said the characters were named after historical figures. Ben Arnold came from Benedict Arnold. Aaron came from Aaron Burr. Armitage also said the film was a way to explore the Vietnam War through a different lens. He asked what it would feel like if Americans experienced the kind of invasion other countries had faced. Behind the scenes, the crew included future Oscar winner Sissy Spacek, who worked as an assistant art director. In 1981, Vincent acted alongside Kim Basinger in Hard Country. It was her first feature film. They filmed it starting in December 1979 in Bakersfield, California, with some scenes shot in Midland, Texas. Vincent played Kyle, a factory worker who spent his nights drinking and hanging out at the Stallion Bar. Basinger played Jody, his girlfriend who wanted to leave their small town and chase something bigger. The story explored small-town life and a woman's desire to break free. Though it was released 2 years after filming started, it still captured what was happening in America in the early 1980s. It was compared to Urban Cowboy But Hard Country was actually filmed first. It came out in theaters on May 8, 1981, and made just over $534,000 at the box office. The cast also included Daryl Hannah, Michael Parks, Tanya Tucker, and Ted Neely, who had played Jesus in Jesus Christ Superstar. Before all of this, he had already shown his talent. In 1971, he got a Golden Globe nomination for Going Home, where he starred with Robert Mitchum. He got another nomination in 1983 for The Winds of War, a huge ABC miniseries about World War II. It aired over 7 nights in February and was watched by 140 million people. It was the most-watched miniseries ever at the time. Vincent was nominated for Best Supporting Actor and shared the spotlight with actors like John Houseman. The show earned 13 Emmy nominations and won 3. It also got 4 Golden Globe nominations. Vincent's most famous role came in 1984 when he starred in Airwolf on CBS. The show first aired on January 22nd. He played Stringfellow Hawk, a helicopter pilot and Vietnam veteran who lived alone in the mountains with his pet eagle and his cello. He was the only one who could fly a secret military helicopter called Airwolf. The show made him a television icon. But behind the scenes, things were dark. During filming his stunt, Double crashed and died in a helicopter fire while the crew watched helplessly. The bad luck didn't stop there. One of the real helicopters used in the show was later sold to a rescue service in Germany. It crashed during a mission killing 3 people. At the height of Airwolf's success, Vincent was the highest-paid actor on TV. Some reports said he made $40,000 per episode. Others claimed he earned $250,000 a week. That was around $500,000 per episode today. But his personal life was falling apart. By 1983, Jan-Michael Vincent was on the edge of something huge. At 39, he had just been arrested for drunk driving and admitted into rehab. It was the first time the public saw what had been going on behind the scenes. Vincent had been struggling with alcohol for years, but until then, it was mostly hidden. Studio executives already knew about his addiction. They had seen it. Still, they believed he was worth the risk. They gave him the lead role in Airwolf. It was a big gamble. At $200,000 per episode, he became the highest-paid actor on television. That should have been a new beginning. Instead, it marked the start of a long decline. During Airwolf's run from 1984 to 1986, Vincent's personal life got worse. In 1984, he was arrested after a fight in a bar. In 1985, it happened again. He was showing up drunk on set. Sometimes he couldn't remember his lines. Sometimes he could barely stand. His co-star Ernest Borgnine had to cover for him more than once. One day filming was delayed for hours after Vincent disappeared on a drinking binge. Other times, he showed up with cuts and bruises from fights the night before. The show kept going, but it was getting harder to work around him. Costs went up. Tension on set grew. Everyone could see the damage. On May 30th, 1986, things got worse. Vincent was sentenced to 30 days in jail. He had violated probation from his 1983 drunk driving case. The violation happened on May 15th. He had been caught driving less than 6 hours after drinking in Ventura County. The court let him delay his sentence until June 25th, so he could pick which city jail to serve in. But on June 25th, he didn't show up. He asked for a 7-day extension. His lawyer said he had entered a treatment program in West Los Angeles and hoped the judge would change the sentence. At the same time, he was preparing for another case. On July 28th, he was due in court for felony battery. He was accused of breaking a woman's nose at his home in Malibu. By that point, Airwolf was falling apart. In the third season in 1986, his cocaine use had become a serious problem. CBS decided he was no longer worth his paycheck. He was showing up high. Sometimes he couldn't speak clearly. In one case, a whole day of filming was wasted because he couldn't say a single usable line. Insurance costs for the production kept going up. Ratings were already dropping. His behavior made it worse. The network canceled the show. When USA Network brought Airwolf back in 1987, they didn't ask Vincent to return. They recast the lead role. It was clear he had blown his chance. After Airwolf, his career dropped fast. He had once acted with stars like Charles Bronson and John Wayne. Now he was stuck in low-budget films. In 1990, he played a spaceship commander in Alienator, where a deadly android hunts down an escaped alien. In 1991, he starred in Raw Nerve with Tracy Lords. In 1992, he made The Deadly Avenger. In 1993, he was in Deadly Heroes. In 1996, he did Lethal Orbit. Most of these movies went straight to video. Audience barely noticed them. By the end of the decade, he was no longer a star. He was a forgotten name in Hollywood. In 1968, Jan-Michael Vincent married Bonnie Poorman. At the time, he was still early in his acting career. He had just started landing roles in films like Journey to Shiloh and The Undefeated. Things were going well for him. He was young, good-looking, and rising fast in Hollywood. In 1972, he starred in The Mechanic. The next year, he played the lead in Disney's The World's Greatest Athlete. In 1973, Jan and Bonnie had a daughter. His career was gaining momentum, and so was his public image. In 1978, he gave one of his most praised performances in the surfing drama Big Wednesday. But while his work was getting better, his personal life was falling apart. Between 1977 and 1979, Jen was arrested 3 times for cocaine possession. The addiction grew worse with time. His behavior became more unstable. It affected both his family life and his work. Even though he and Bonnie stayed married for years after the trouble began, the damage kept building. Their divorce was finalized in 1986. That same year, he married again, this time to Joanne Robinson. The marriage to Joanne began just as his career hit a major turning point. In 1986, his hit TV show Airwolf was canceled. The cancellation was partly due to his growing drug problems. What followed in his private life was even more disturbing. Joanne Robinson later described their relationship as violent and terrifying. In 1998, after 12 years of marriage, she filed for divorce. She also requested a restraining order. The court granted it and barred Jen from coming within 300 yards of their Malibu home. In her legal filing, she described a long pattern of abuse that started in 1985. She said Jan gave her black eyes and broke her bones. She said the violence was not a one-time thing, but something she lived with for years. People who knew Jan during that time said he was dangerous when high or drunk. And according to Joanne, the abuse wasn't only physical. One of the most disturbing parts of her statement involved claims of sexual coercion. She said Jan forced her to sleep with him and with groups of his friends. She said this happened more than once during their marriage. These were not rumors. They were legal accusations made in court documents. By then, Jan's career was already in decline. He had moved from major films to low-budget titles like Deadly Embrace in 1989 and Animal Instincts in 1992. In 1995, another woman came forward with serious claims. Lisa Marie Chiafulo was a 33-year-old former model who had lived with Jen. After they broke up, she said he attacked her while she was pregnant with his child. According to her, He kicked her in the stomach so hard that it caused a miscarriage. She filed a lawsuit that same year. The case went to court, but Jen never showed up to defend himself. As a result, a judge issued a default judgment. He ordered Jen to pay $374,000 in damages. Lisa said the attack left her unable to work. This happened during a dark chapter in Jen's life. On August 26, 1996, at 4:30 p.m., Jan-Michael Vincent was driving through Mission Viejo, California. He was 52. His girlfriend, Nicole Wallace, was ahead of him in a 1985 Cadillac with her 2 young sons in the back seat. They were on their way to her mother's house. Vincent was behind the wheel of his 1988 Mazda when he crashed into the back of her car at the intersection of Alicia Parkway and Finisterra. His vehicle spun out and slammed into a traffic light. He was taken to Mission Hospital Regional Medical Center with a broken neck. His blood alcohol level was 0.18%. California's legal limit was 0.08. The crash wasn't just an accident. It was the result of a long history of drinking and drug use. Paramedics put a breathing tube down his throat to keep him alive. Later, Vincent said this procedure was done wrong. He threw up during it. The force of the vomiting damaged his vocal cords. From that day forward, he spoke in a harsh whisper. His voice never recovered. In 1997, he filed a lawsuit against the Orange County Fire Authority. He claimed the injury to his throat cost him acting jobs. His career had already slowed down, but this made things worse. Roles became harder to get. Directors couldn't hear him clearly. His once strong screen presence had been reduced to a weak voice and a fragile body. By September 18, 2007, more than a decade after the crash, Vincent sat down for an interview on the TV show The Insider. When asked about the accident, he said he had no memory of it. His exact words were, "You know, I have no idea what you're talking about. I don't remember being in an accident." That moment shocked viewers. It showed how far his mental state had slipped. His memory was fading. Years of substance abuse and possible brain damage from the crash had taken a toll. In 2012, at the age of 67, another medical emergency hit him. He got an infection in his right leg. It was caused by peripheral artery disease. The pain was intense. He told the National Enquirer in 2014, "An infection in my leg got steadily worse. I felt like I was beaten with a whip." Doctors at Central Mississippi Medical Center had no choice. To save his life, they amputated most of his right leg. He said he blacked out during the worst part. He woke up on a ventilator and saw that his leg was gone. A month later, he got another infection. Surgeons had to remove even more of his leg. His wife Anna said doctors warned them he might not survive. He learned to use a prosthetic, but spent most of his last years in a wheelchair. His body was failing. His memory was damaged. His voice was nearly gone. On February 10, 2019, Jan-Michael Vincent died of cardiac arrest at Mission Hospital in Asheville, North Carolina. He was 74. His death certificate listed him as 73. The cause was natural. No autopsy was done. His body was cremated. For someone who once earned $200,000 per episode on Airwolf, his death came quietly. It wasn't reported until almost a month later. On March 8, 2019, TMZ broke the story. The delay was strange. The Associated Press said there was no clear reason why it took so long. Reporters couldn't reach Vincent or his wife. The Los Angeles Times confirmed his death only after getting the certificate from Buncombe County. This delay showed how far he had fallen from fame. At his peak, he was a star. In the 1970s and 80s, he had looks, talent, and success. He starred in The Mechanic in 1972 and Hooper in 1978. From 1984 to 1986, he played the lead in Airwolf and was one of the highest-paid actors on television. But over time, he lost control. Addiction, accidents, and illness pulled him down. By the end, he was living far from the spotlight in North Carolina. His death marked the final chapter in a life full of promise and pain. He left behind no grand farewell, just a quiet exit and a legacy shaped by both fame and tragedy.